All right, let's jump right in. We're going to tackle a word today that, well, it's one of the most misunderstood words out there. Anarchy. Now, I bet I know what you're thinking. Chaos, riots, mayhem, right? But what if I told you that the common definition we all know might be completely wrong? Stick around, because this gets really interesting. So before we go any further, I want you to do something for me. Just for a second, what does the word anarchy actually mean to you? What's the first thing that pops into your head? Is it just total chaos, no laws, society just falling apart? Go ahead and lock that image in your mind. Yeah, if chaos was what you pictured, you are definitely not alone. I mean, that's pretty much the modern dictionary definition, right? A state of disorder due to absence of authority. It paints this picture of anarchy as just a negative thing, a power vacuum where everything descends into madness. But here's the thing. According to the source material we're looking at, that's not the whole story. Not by a long shot. In fact, it's not even the original story. You could almost say that this modern definition has kind of hijacked the word. The argument in our source material is that the original meaning was actually something completely different, something much more thoughtful and, believe it or not, constructive. It wasn't about the absence of order. It was about a very specific type of order. Okay, so to really get our heads around this, we've got to do a little digging. We need to go back to the very beginning, all the way back to the word's ancient roots. And when you break it down, it's actually really simple. It comes from ancient Greek. You've got an, which means without, and archi, which means ruler. You put them together, you get anarchia. And what does that mean? Literally, without rulers. Now, pay close attention to what it doesn't say. It doesn't say without rules. It doesn't say without order. The entire idea is specifically about getting rid of a ruling class, not getting rid of structure itself.
And this is where that distinction becomes super important. You see, according to this perspective, a society without rulers isn't a society without laws, like, say, natural law. It's not without leaders, but it sees them as guides, people you choose to follow, not commanders who order you around. It's not even without government, as long as that government is something you voluntarily agree to. The whole idea is that order comes from the bottom up, from free choice, not from top-down force.
So, this brings us to what is maybe the most critical distinction in this whole conversation. It all hinges on understanding the massive difference between a ruler and a leader. They might sound like they're in the same ballpark, but in this context, they are worlds apart. The source material uses two cool Greek words to break this down. On one hand, you have the archon. That's your ruler. This is the person who commands through force, who sits on top of a hierarchy that you're forced into. But on the other hand, you have the hodegos. This is more like a guide, a leader. This person doesn't bark orders, they lead by example. You follow them because you choose to, because you believe they're heading in the right direction. See the difference? One is about power over you. The other is a journey you decide to walk with someone. And this distinction isn't just some modern philosophical idea. The source points to this quote from Jesus in the book of Mark. He's talking to his followers and says, look, you see how the rulers of the world, the archons, lord their authority over people? Yeah, don't do that. It shall not be so among you. He was basically outlining a totally different model, one built on serving each other, not dominating each other. Okay, so that's the theory. But what would a society built on this idea of no rulers actually look like in practice? Let's dig into how the source material paints a picture of this kind of community. First off, this is not some new radical idea that just popped up. This concept of non-ruling has super deep roots all across different cultures and throughout history. I mean, you see it way back in ancient Greece. Homer uses the term, and the philosopher Zeno was already imagining a utopian anarchy based on moral law. You see it in ancient China with Lao Tzu's teachings. And as our source really emphasizes, the early Christian kingdom was designed around the idea of servants, not rulers. Now, this next point from the source is pretty wild. The early Christians were actually accused of being anarchists. Why? Because they refused to give their ultimate allegiance to the Roman emperor or the state. They were seen as subversives. And in that same vein, Jesus himself gets framed as the beloved anarchist because he taught people that they shouldn't be ruled by others but should follow a higher law. So what does this kind of voluntary society actually run on? Well, it's all about personal responsibility. The whole system is based on what the source calls the perfect law of liberty, where you care about your neighbor's rights just as much as you care about your own. Social needs? They're met through genuine charity and cooperation, not through forced taxes. It's about people taking back the power and responsibility they've handed over to the state and instead forming this living network of free people, all working together by choice. And man, this quote from Leo Tolstoy really just drives that point home. He argued that Christianity, in its true sense, puts an end to the state. He saw this fundamental clash between a philosophy based on personal conscience and loving your neighbor and a state that's built on force and coercion. It's a really powerful thought, highlighting the deep, deep tension between these two ways of thinking about society. So, where does that leave us? What we've really just walked through is a total reframing of the word anarchy. We've moved it away from the common idea of chaos and disorder and moved it towards a philosophy built on voluntary cooperation, on personal liberty and responsibility. And that, well, that brings us to the big final question. This is really the heart of the whole thing, isn't it? Can a society truly be free? And is that freedom found by choosing personal responsibility over being managed by rulers? It's a huge question, and it's definitely something to chew on long after this is over. And that's our look at the original meaning of anarchy, drawing from the source material we explored today. Hey, if this gave you some food for thought, we'd love it if you'd help get the conversation going. Go ahead and like, subscribe, and definitely share your thoughts down in the comments. Oh, and if that idea of a living network we mentioned earlier piqued your interest, you can learn a whole lot more at preparingyou.com. The link for that is right down in the description. Thanks so much for tuning in.